Now by David Bruce. He's an independent researcher specializing in policing and public safety. David, thanks very much for your time. Welcome to the AM Report. So Eusebius Makaiza, who's a media colleague and a political commentator himself, wrote on social media that Khosa's death shows that we, South Africans, including many of us who are black citizens, struggle to take seriously the lives or the right to life and the right not to be tortured by our own state. Do you think that's a fair assessment? Is this a fair statement to make?
Certainly, I would agree with that. There's much greater acceptance of police violence and brutality in South Africa than, there's nothing like the level of outrage that there is currently in the U.S. I think possibly part of the reason for that is that it's not just that people aren't just responding to individual incidents, but that in America, particularly amongst African Americans, police violence is identified almost as a kind of continuation of a history of oppression. I think police violence in South Africa isn't generally perceived in that way.
Right. It's difficult to look at the unrest in the U.S. and not touch on the racial undertones, perhaps not even undertones, the racial theme, really, of the unrest there, whereas the situation back at home doesn't easily lend itself to that type of analysis. Do you think perhaps that may have a bearing to the very different responses to these similar incidents?
Yes, well, I think, I think the one thing is just that in America, African Americans are very strongly aware of being treated in a different way by police. And I think there probably are issues of a kind of type of bias or discrimination in policing, even though the majority of our police are black. I think there are those issues in South Africa. They are likely to be. But there hasn't been a very strong, let's say, there isn't a strong awareness and consciousness. It hasn't been an issue around which there's been, for instance, research or any kind of mobilization.
Yeah, that's right. Let's just talk about, some of the treatment of the ways through which families' voices have been highlighted during this period. We heard a lot, in fact, in the very early stages, messages from George Floyd's sister, whereas in South Africa, I guess in many respects, some people may feel that the family of Collins Khosa hasn't been given as much of, space to ventilate some of their frustrations, sentiments, etc. How have media industries handled both incidents, and to what extent do you think that's had a bearing on the general public's response?
Well, I think there have been news outlets in South Africa that have, engaged very directly with the family and the family's experiences, and because some of the people who were during incidents during which Collins Khosa was killed, or at least fatally attacked, his partner and I think it was his brother-in-law were also present during the incident, and so they were direct witnesses to the incident. And so, as part of the story of the incident, at least people who have focused quite closely on the story have been telling their story. Their story, they are some of the principal witnesses in the court case that was lodged against the Minister of Defense and so on. Yes, but I mean, I must say that there hasn't been that. I just saw something, some coverage on, I think it was CNN yesterday, where a news anchor, created a kind of interface between the chief of police and family members. And the one very strong contrast is there hasn't been that level of accessibility from our senior leaders of the police or in that case the military in responding to the incident. So it's very much been these very kind of formalized press briefings and conferences where the issue was addressed, while the chief of police in Minneapolis made himself publicly available immediately after the incident to speak to people about the incident and to and in fact took action immediately against the police officers involved.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much.